The average college graduate is saddled with thousands of dollars of debt. That's because the average cost of a four-year education in this country has exploded over the last 2 decades. But the data consistently shows that those with a bachelor's degree out-earn those with high school degrees. So what is the value of education? It's our subject tonight, coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts. This is The Business of Life. Welcome to The Business of Life, coming to you this week from the student-infested streets of Boston, Massachusetts. Earlier today, I was talking to a young production assistant here on the set who goes to Brandeis University. Now, this sets his parents back a staggering $63,000 a year. That's $250,000 to complete his undergraduate education. And this, he told me, was one of the reasons that next year he's transferring. So is it worth it? Is the crippling debt accrued by students a smart financial decision? Compared to the rest of the world, why do Americans pay so much for higher education? As always, we're going to break down this issue using facts, figures, dollars, and cents. And I'm joined by a panel of exceptionally clever people, uniquely qualified to answer the question, what is the value of education? So let's meet them. Zach Malamed is a junior at the University of Maryland and the founder and executive director of Student Voice, a nonprofit organization advocating for student participation in education reform. Allison Schrager is an economist and writer. She went all the way in higher education, earning a PhD in economics from Columbia University. That should come in handy. And Dale J. Stevens is a self-described elementary school dropout and a recipient of the Teal Fellowship, which awarded him $100,000 to found Uncollege, a movement that seeks to change the notion that going to college is the only path to success. He's also the author of this book, Hacking Your Education, which you should all buy. So let's get to our first topic, going to college. This is kind of a big topic. The question that everyone asks me, and the one that I want to know, Allison, as the economist in the room, why is it so expensive?
Well, not every school is $63,000. I mean, you can go to state schools or you can go to community colleges and those are cheaper. I mean, even the costs of those schools have been getting more expensive, and that partially has to do with administration, facilities, fees, and just general inflation.
How much does it cost you to go to school?
A little over $45,000.
And you are accruing debt rapidly.
Yeah, I'm accruing debt.
You know who doesn't have any college debt?
You.
Dale.
Oh, yeah.
Dale's reason for being on this panel, besides being brilliant and a fantastic author, is you chose not to go to college in a sort of ideological way. You said, this is not worth it for me.
It's an expensive choice. My parents certainly were the kinds of people who put away money in a 529 savings plan. My dad actually still emails me being like, there's this balance left. Are you ever going to use it? Probably not.
We're going to chip away at this idea of why college is so expensive, because it has ballooned in cost. Let's go to our first number. 1 in 3, that's the number of college graduates who say that their current job does not require a bachelor's degree. Does anyone here have a job that seems like, you're really not using what you studied for?
I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting, and I'm currently a waitress in a bowling alley. And I graduated with Latin honors from Boston University, but I serve beer to other college kids.
If someone comes to you and say that I'm going to do this, I'm going to take out X amount of money and I'm going to get a theater degree, the return on investment on that's quite different, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily. I think that's taking a short-term perspective. I mean, she graduated during a tough economy, but in a rough economy, your best hedge against downturns and risk is in education.
All right, well, let's talk about student debt. Student loans are the only type of consumer debt that has increased since 2008. And 4% of Americans with student debt owe more than $100,000 on their loans.
There's one stat that I really want to point out. I think it's incredibly important to realize that the U.S. Department of Education makes $50 billion in profit off of our student loans. $50 billion in profit is more than ExxonMobil, the most profitable company in the United States, makes. And that's off of our education, that's off of our future. So when it comes to actually solving this problem, I don't think that we're necessarily just looking at the system fixing itself. We're looking at multiple stakeholders coming to the table. Of course, students need to express their frustration with the system. If students aren't frustrated and they keep paying all of this money for college, the system's going to thrive and the students en masse will suffer.
Who thinks they have the highest student loan debts in this room? Raise your hand to the rooftop if you're like, oh my God, like I have this horrible. What was initially?
I had about $80,000 worth of debt.
But you paid that money off?
Most of it, yeah. I'm good at my job.
Do you think that education that you paid $80,000 for allowed you to make that sort of money to pay it off?
Yeah, because I will be able to pay this off. I took a risk and it's working.
So you would say it was a good investment?
For me?
Yeah, for you.
That's all I'm saying is this worked out for me.
Let's go to our next stat. We actually have a graph. These are lifetime earnings sorted by major. You'll see up there at the top is chemical engineering, which nets a median of over $2 million in a lifetime. And down there at the bottom, unsurprisingly, fine art, which yields just above $500,000.
I think what our guest said at the end here is perfect, right? It worked for you. And the key is that not everyone should go, right? If you want to be an artist, maybe it doesn't make the most sense. If you want to go into something that's actually going to pay off, it may make sense. But if you want to be, say, a computer scientist, it also may make more sense to go to a 3-month coding boot camp that costs $10,000, has a 98% employability rate, and will get you a job in 3 months.
I think we have to step back and really define what people are getting out of college. Traditionally, it was not seen as a vocational degree. This is a lifetime degree you're going to have. You said these are lifetime earnings, not the first 5, 10 years out. And most economists agree if you want to thrive in the modern labor market, you have to be really resilient. And that requires the right balance of both technical and interpersonal and social skills.
Absolutely. Learning how to make friends and going to parties and all those kinds of things are an incredibly important part of the college experience.
And community building and networking.
Right, but you can do that in Thailand for 3 months, for $2,000 as opposed to going to college for $63,000.
It's totally not the same thing. I mean, I said the group work, there's group dynamic. An economist here at Harvard, Larry Katz, talks a lot about how even liberal arts degrees teach you a lot of very important soft skills. It's hard to quantify that. It might be hard to see that 5 years out of college, but it does teach you how to be adaptable, how to think critically, how to think analytically, and these are going to be really important to thrive in the modern labor market.
Exactly. What about this? Like the barista with the BA? Should everybody actually go to college?
Well, think about it like this. We have the highest high school graduation rate in American history at 81%. 86% of those students actually end up going to college. Now, out of those 86% of students who graduate high school and go to college, what we're finding is that only 56% of those students actually stay in school and graduate. That doesn't mean that these students who don't complete high school or don't complete college don't have a place in the workforce. What it means is that we have to come up with alternative routes for these students to actually be able to pursue a learning experience. What Dale is pursuing is one option. It shouldn't be the only option, and I think one of the tricks here is making sure that the options we create aren't for just those who can afford to not go to college. College is a safety net. That's why I'm going to college. But there are opportunities that students who don't have the privilege of having familial support to go on and pursue other learning experiences, that there needs to be a development of those opportunities.
I have something for you. It's our next number, 225%. That's the increase in in-state public college tuition from 1984 to 2014. That doesn't surprise me. Now, I'm going to tell you something that did surprise me the other day. I was reading the New York Times. This Times article said that a recent study said at public universities, 19% of students are graduating in 4 years, okay? Now, moving on, this is the same article. Community college, 5% are earning their associate's degree in 2 years. So the sense that we look at people saying, this is what it costs to go to a 4-year college, most people are going for 6 years, right? Yeah. I mean, so we're like
all those
using the
stats
wrong
that you
metric.
see in, say, U.S. News and World Reports, those are all based off of 6-year figures, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. I think that community colleges are a great option, but other countries have things like apprenticeship programs, for example, that provide other pathways into the workforce for people who need on-the-job experience that companies can fund because they can see the reason that they need employees. That doesn't necessarily have to be tied to governmental funding in any way whatsoever.
Well, not the only factor in this, but I would like to argue that the fact that we see the highest high school graduation rate in American history doesn't mean we're churning up people ready for college. There's been a movement over the past decade, 2 decades, to graduate students.
Because schools funding is directly tied to students' performance on state tests.
Yeah, but let's be clear, like graduating doesn't mean you learned what you need to learn.
Who out here had the same experience in college? That they felt like they were just like, hey, get you out of it. You did?
That's definitely happened to me before. It had gotten to a point in one of my accounting courses that I was so deep into it. By the end of the semester, I had already looked into taking the class the next semester because I was like, there's no way I'm gonna pass this. And then before the final, our professor told us, I'm gonna upload a survey onto our online forum and you can fill it out and tell me what grade that you think that you deserve, but you'd have to like calculate your homework grade and your tests and calculate like your actual grade and then like state what you think you deserve. I knew I was gonna bomb the final. I put that I think I deserved a C and
God,
I ended up getting a C.
I would have said I deserve an A.
I ended up getting a C.
If that guy's gonna leave an opening like that, I'm gonna take it.
But I was just happy I passed.
All right, let's move on to our next number. 1915, all the way back during World War I, that's the last year when the wage gap between high school and college graduates was as large as it is today. You're the uncollege man. That would seem to suggest to me that this is the high cost of not going to college, right? I mean, that gap is enormous, and we're 100 years later, this is at a record high.
There's a couple of factors that you need to consider when looking at the gap between high school earnings and college earnings. The first is that all of these earnings are for people who are over 25. So they're not considering the 23 to 25-year-olds who, in the last couple of years, have not been able to find jobs whatsoever. Also, if you look at the graph of how long it takes you to earn back your college education, it's been creeping up from 33 to 34 to 35 to 36 today. We've also seen the real earnings of college graduates, adjusted for inflation, decline in the last 10 years, at the same time that the cost of college is skyrocketing. So the real question is college adding any value, or are all the smart people going to college?
Zach, is it adding value? You're racking up the debt, man. He's not going to school, you are.
The best way to answer this would be in 20 years, but I can't do that. I don't have the luxury of that at the moment. So I would say that whenever I describe my college experience, it's buying me time. It's buying me time to figure out who I want to be, what do I want to do.
But there are ways to explore yourself and understand who you are in semi-structured ways by, say, taking a gap year, which you said that you did.
How many people have the luxury of having the money to do that, though?
Going abroad and taking a gap year can be really cheap.
Without the safety net of knowing that you might come back and have a better chance of getting a job than had you...
but you're going to make friends and have life experiences and do all the things that we ascribe.
And not have a job.
I did a gap year and I went to college and graduate school. And I mean, gap year was a great time. I made lifelong friends, but I can't say I made the same sort of social connections and built up the same skills I did in college.
Let's be real here. The social experience is about getting drunk and having sex. And you can do that down the street at your local dive bar.
That's unfair. Also, like, if you brought up a lot...
It's actually not unfair at all. That is a ton of what the college experience is about.
Well, you've never been to college. You don't know.
I spent 6 months in college. I spent 6 months in college and dropped out. I'm back.
So let's go to our next number. $100,000, that's the amount of money given to Teal Fellows to defer college and work outside an academic setting. Currently, the percentage of successful entrepreneurs in high-growth industries who report having a bachelor's degree, 95%.
I think the interesting thing about the Teal Fellowship is that it's a $2 million PR campaign to talk about this, right? We are now having this conversation. And I think it's more important than ever for students to make an intentional choice about where they're going to school and what they're majoring in.
And I think that in that sense, because of your very presence here, Peter Thiel has been successful.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a lot of information to assimilate. I want to know what you guys think. Questions, comments, etc. This man right here.
Thank you. Studying abroad was a really meaningful part of my college experience, but it was an expensive one. Do you think that it is a worthwhile expenditure for most undergraduate students?
I think it just depends on what your financial resources are, and also, I mean, it also might be relevant to what you're studying. If you're studying Spanish, I mean, obviously that will take your Spanish to another level. Ideally, it would be open to the people who wouldn't normally have access. I mean, a lot of kids grow up getting to go to Europe with their parents. The kids who never would have that sort of experience probably the ones who benefit the most.
The State Department also has some very nice scholarships for learning languages that are deemed critically important. Arabic,
there's
Russian,
a lot
for
of stuff
example.
out there if you look hard enough. Let's move on to our second topic, the modern campus, and let's bring up our first number, 7%. That's the admission rate for Columbia University in 2014. In 1988, that number was 65%. Who got into their first choice college? I'm gonna go to you just because you're right on my line of sight.
I got into Boston College. That was my first choice.
Did you have the instinct that so many people that I know have, which is to just shoot the moon and say, I'll apply to Harvard or Columbia or something?
I don't know. My sister went to BC, so I knew that was somewhere that I wanted to go, and I did apply to Harvard, and I didn't get in. But it also wasn't my first choice, and I knew that BC was a better fit
so
for me.
you applied to Harvard?
I did.
And you didn't get in?
No.
But it wasn't your first choice?
But it wasn't my first choice.
That's the twist.
Yeah.
They would have been
the
lucky to
only
have
one.
you. Yeah. How are these elite universities doing with students on the lower end of the income scale, minority students that have been traditionally ignored by these universities?
I believe this push is happening, but I mean, I think the problem really happens before college. Those are the students that don't get access to sort of good high school education or even elementary school education and don't end up on the track. I think universities would love to have a diverse student body of different income levels, but it's hard to find the qualified students because they're just being shortchanged much earlier on.
I agree. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes we make in these conversations around education is saying, let's talk just about higher ed. Let's talk just about K-12. Let's talk just about the workforce. They're all interconnected. To silo them off is to really, create a disjointed system where there's no flow and students certainly don't benefit from that.
All right, let's go to our next number. More than half of employers prefer applicants with, quote, traditional degrees from an average university over online degrees from a top university. I am going to throw this to my techno-utopian friend who lives in San Francisco. Dale, I remember a time when online education was going to be the great panacea for everything, right?
That was 2012.
That was 2012. Like, this is going to bring costs down because we can get all this stuff to people through the basic internet connection. Employers aren't biting, are they?
I think online education sort of came out of the gate with such fury because there were people leaving Google to do this, right? And they started Udacity and Coursera. And certainly, Udacity and Coursera made a lot of headway getting top universities on board. And I think the most interesting thing that they were able to prove is that the content doesn't actually matter that much, right? What matters is having an interesting experience, being around a body of peers who can push you and challenge you. In my work, I see employers increasingly reaching out to me who are now saying, everyone we see has a college degree. So we can no longer use that as a filtering mechanism.
There is one company that's buying into this, and that's Starbucks. Starbucks is working with Arizona State University to cover half the tuition for its employees to pursue online degrees through Arizona State University. But the problem here is not many of their employees are taking this on.
Let's go to the next number, which is related, 97%. That's the dropout rate for Duke University's massive open online course in bioelectricity. Of over 12,000 students, only 313 completed the course. I looked a little more at this in some of these other courses. MIT, similar course, had a 5% completion rate. Another Duke course had 53,000 students and, again, a 5% completion rate. Starbucks and these guys can invest all they want. People don't seem to be sort of biting on this type of learning.
Well, so the thing with Starbucks and Arizona State University is that these students are actually getting degrees, not just the certificates that some of these MOOCs are providing. So they're holding it to the same.
And let's be clear that MOOC is an acronym.
Yeah, sorry, a massive open online course.
Okay, yeah, not a slander on someone. Okay.
So really what you see here is that when we value the online degree in the same way that we value the degree of someone taking physical classes, students are more likely to complete those courses. And the more that corporations and other employers actually start accepting these alternative models of going through the educational experience and attaining the skills that you need to get a job, and UnCollege is included in that, you're going to see more people pursuing these routes. It's a top-down system where the employers are going to be the ones that really drive what students actually end up pursuing and what they invest their time in.
One of the reasons you have such high dropout rates in community colleges is the lower income students don't come in with the right support.
Yeah,
and it's hard enough at community college, but when it's 100%. Online, it's even worse.
And so what we've seen with the MOOCs is all of the MOOCs have developed coaching systems. And they developed coaching systems because they found that students, when they're working one-on-one with a coach to set week-over-week goals and keep them accountable, actually do complete the course.
In your world, which is a kind of a separate ecosystem in Silicon Valley. What is the perception of this kind of thing?
Being a dropout is absolutely a point of pride in Silicon Valley, right? If anything, it buys you social capital.
Yeah, being a dropout and an entrepreneur is about as sexy as being the next Michael Jordan or LeBron James today, 100%.
Is that true? Is that true? Is it sexy to be a dropout? Are there any dropouts here?
Well, no, being a dropout and an entrepreneur.
So you have to be a dropout and an entrepreneur. A lot of people in Silicon Valley pushing for things like immigration reform, because we don't have enough people in this country to actually fill positions that are required to develop technology. So what you'll see here is the global percentages of tertiary educated adults across the world, basically people that have college degrees. At the top, you'll see, somewhat surprisingly, the Russian Federation has the highest percentage of tertiary educated adults. They also have a very low literacy rate, by the way. And down at the bottom, China. This brings us to another stat, because we want to talk about this sort of globalized world of education. 30,000 PhDs. That's the number of degrees awarded in science and engineering in China per year. In the US, we award around 25,000 per year. Now, obviously, rather different population, 1 billion versus 320.
Also, all PhDs aren't equal. I mean, the best researchers in the world all come here. I came back to America to do my PhD because it was much better here.
Why is that, by the way? I mean, people love it. Like, all the other systems are so great.
You know, they're all public universities that are severely underfunded. And that's one of the reasons they're cheap and, more accessible. But American universities, if you're a researcher or you're a professor, they're a great place. You get great resources, you don't have a big teaching load. And for that reason, they attract the superstar professors from all over the world.
A lot to digest and assimilate. So I'm going to throw it to you guys and see who has a question for our panelists.
So I'm wondering, what do other countries do in terms of higher education that maybe we can implement here? This is
a really great question, a very important one. Why can we not be like Sweden? What is the reason for that? I mean, why is there so much resistance to that kind of model?
Structurally, it's because there's no centralization of curriculum in this country, and every ed department in all 50 states has a different jurisdiction over the curriculum in each of those states.
Do we want to be like that? As I mentioned earlier, our universities are the best in the world because they're, a lot of them are private and they have more resources. So that's why they're research centers. They're not teaching centers and they're not free and they're expensive, but there's a lot of really good things about our university system that makes it the envy of all the world. You never hear about great scientific breakthroughs coming through Sweden or Germany, and most of their talented academics want to be in universities here.
Zach, I see some Zach skepticism.
Well, we also have one of the most heterogeneous countries in the world, whether it be socioeconomically, racially, geographic, everything. We're so diverse. And to expect, a student from, urban Oakland, California to have the same needs and the same learning experience as a student from rural Iowa is just unrealistic. Sweden, come on, you're gonna compare America to Sweden? We compare America to Finland all the time. America is nothing like Finland as a country. They're just both countries.
I lived in Sweden for 4 years, and it's true, they are all the same. All right, we're gonna take another question right there.
Can we expect a student debt bailout in the near future?
If you really want a bailout, go out and vote for people who are gonna help you make that happen. That's the end of the story. We can't expect something that we don't advocate for. So if we as a country do not believe in it, it won't happen.
This is a good point, because the craziness of college, one of them is the sticker price. The other one is seeing people that are rearing children from 6 months old to go to Princeton or something.
We've bought into the system. So the higher education system is a business. There's no denying that. Remember I said, they're making $50 billion. US Department of Education is making $50 billion off of our loans. The fact that it is a business means that we as consumers of this business have the ability to influence it. If we don't choose to influence it and push it in a certain direction that we desire, then it will never move in that direction. So we can complain all we want, but unless we do something about it, nothing's gonna happen.
Zach, congratulations. You are the first guest in the history of Business of Life to get applause during the question and answer period. All right, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. Zach, Allison, and Dale, and the good people of Boston, Massachusetts. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Business of Life.
Business of Life is made possible by Better Money Habits. It's a free resource that helps you build practical knowledge and take control of your finances. Powered by Bank of America. See more at bettermoneyhabits.com.